Jamie Davidson and Joie Roberts, who's back for her second appearance on the Two Fun Guys podcast. You're actually the first person to have a dual appearance. So
yes,
congratulations, round of applause.
I have arrived.
You got your first badge.
You made it.
There you go.
You made it. Thank you guys so much for coming. You guys invited us to a really cool Amazon event last night, and we got to meet a bunch of people. You introduced us to a ton of people, and you guys are business partners, but I would love to start with a little background on both of you and kind of what you both do in the business.
Yeah, sure. So we official titles are managing partners of AMZ Insiders, which is basically coaching, consulting for people that primarily looking to build brands on Amazon. Whether we get a lot of people that are just early in their journey, but with our background in Amazon, we get people that are doing, say 5 million plus as well too, and probably somewhere in that range. But a lot of people that are motivated but earlier in their stages. Yeah,
awesome. And then what do you like? Do you have different roles that you operate, or what does that dynamic look like in AMZ Insider?
We're still trying to figure that out,
okay.
right? I mean,
it's
when
a
you're
work in progress.
partners, like, what do you do? No, yes, we definitely have different roles. I took on a big role, and one of the reasons I wanted to partner with Jamie is I noticed a big void of women sellers, like women selling on Amazon. Like, hey, y'all, stop shopping and spending money. You can actually sell product and have more money to buy whatever you want. So when I came on, that's part of my podcast, Fearless Sellers, the Women of Amazon, was to lift up and celebrate women sellers. Because still, it's only like 30% of Amazon sellers are women, but success is equal. It's not like men are better sellers than women. I actually think women have a little bit of a leg up because we're good at shopping, which is helpful for sourcing. So that was like one of the first conversations we had when we were partnering together, like, hey, I can bring this element to the table. And then I built my first brand 0 to $1 million in 12 months. So I'm pretty good at the early stages, right? Like getting to your first million, maybe up to first 3 million. And Jamie, with his business, he's sold over $100 million in product on Amazon in 1 year. And his products have gone into retail and have really gone global. So Jamie can lift people up to take them and scale as big as they want to get.
Yeah, I just add it was kind of an easy for me to like for Joie because she went through the program and it was like, oh, she did really well. I learned more about her background. Like, oh, she's, it wasn't just the program, it's like, hey, she's motivated and a good entrepreneur. So I was like, oh, and just what she said too, like, hey, that both men and women, but she's going to resonate more with, you attract, as I learned in this business over years, you used to attract people that are more like yourself, and your demographic. And so that was good. And it's just more fun, as you guys know, to build together. I had original partners but they weren't vested on this side of things here too. So this was like a game changer to have, both of us focused on it. And so it's been good. And as far as gravitating, I'd say, there's the marketing and there's the development. She's great with the coaching, even though it's a team effort, but she digs in a lot on that. And probably take a little more kind of some of the technical and marketing aspects. But we have our hands in both stuff, together, I'd say. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Jinx. I'll go. So, Joey, you've given us an extensive background on yourself. And if anybody wants to go listen to that episode, just scroll down, you'll find the Joie Roberts episode. It's really good. I'm very curious, Jamie, how did you even start on Amazon? Because you've been doing it for quite a while now.
Yeah, my background was I was an Army officer early in my career. Went to West Point. And then I got out of the military in my 20s. And then I was kind of going through this corporate ladder and banking and progressing a few different industries up there. But I got fairly successful in this training company, Kaplan. But these investment bankers started approaching me about like, hey, you could probably run your own company. You're probably not going to run this company, but with your background, you'd make a good CEO of kind of a small, mid-sized company. So these private equity guys, they introduced me to a bunch of them, and they started recruiting me. It brought me to Atlanta, Georgia, where I live currently. And I was like the chief operating officer for this private equity-backed like tutoring training company. But my next door neighbor was an IT consultant. Jason, his name is Chinese, lived in the U.S. for about the last 25 years, but he was selling these cases started selling them out of his garage. He had the inventory in his garage. And it was like, hey, what's this thing? We'd come hang out, drink, or a glass of wine, or I was teaching him how to make a proper cocktail because he's trying to learn. and we'd hang out and just drink. And this little funny thing was like, oh, this thing looks like it's getting more serious. And we started talking more and more about it. And so that was like, oh, this is like a real business. And, I was doing fairly well financially or reasonably well. But, he was always talking like, oh, you got to, entrepreneurship's where it's at. You got to do this. And, like a lot of people, I always had this even back in my military days, I had a little vending business. I always had this urge to do it, but it was harder to make that leap, especially as you got a little bit older and I had 3 boys, married to 3 boys. It was like, how am I going to do this and make that leap? But I saw the business was really growing enough, though the opportunity was there for me to jump into it. So I was like, let's do this. And I liked the industry because the e-commerce industry, I was like, oh, I want something that's going to have a lot of runway for years to come if I get involved into it. So that's really how I got involved to it with kind of a neighbor. There was a couple other business partners at the time too, but that was it. There was originally a lot of iPad cases too, because the whole thing too, which especially early on was like, it was so light, the product was so light, and we could sell it for a high margin. It's kind of actually, Joie kind of in some ways replicated that with her brand in terms of high margins. But back then it was like, it was perfect, these cases, because and the prices, there wasn't a lot of pricing pressure. So you're basically, we're acquiring them at, basically $1 or something, but you're selling them at $38 or something.
Shipping is dirt cheap because they weigh nothing and they're small.
Yeah. So we could fly inventory. And there wasn't just a lot of people really didn't understand, what that meant to sell on Amazon then. So it was kind of, the Wild West. And there's a lot of people, a lot of IT kind of computer science background, people got into it because it was, it's like SEO and all that kind of stuff.
What year was this when this was happening?
2012, like 2013. So it was, but it wasn't brand building, which is, different. I'm sure we'll talk some of the stuff now. Now it's different. I think it's better, in terms of how to go about it, because it's more, I'd say, fair and reasonable on the up and up. But first, then it was just like this massive opportunity that if you could understand how to kind of game the system in certain ways and get your stuff there and move quickly, you could do pretty well.
Cool.
That's awesome. I want to talk about scaling. And, I think a philosophy we've learned from you guys is building a brand to exit. That's where you can make quite a bit of money.
Yep.
But I want to know, why do you still stay in Amazon? Why do you have your business still in Amazon? And why should people get into Amazon?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Amazon, I talk about this a lot. A lot of people love to think, oh, something's saturated or something doesn't work. A lot of it has to do with, I can be guilty of this too. It's a lot of self-limiting beliefs as individuals and mindset stuff, probably things that you guys know a lot about. But it's like, so people want to have that, like, oh, I missed the boat, or I should have done it. I should have gotten into 2015 or 2017. The reality is, I view Amazon as a distribution platform. It's not that you have to sell your product. You don't have to sell your product on Amazon. But to me, for us, it's always been the most powerful platform. It's by far, it's bigger than like the next 9 biggest competitors combined. But like last year's number did just over $500 billion, so like $500 billion in sales. So, and the numbers are, still hockey stick growth year over year. So in aggregate, it's a massive opportunity. Amazon's competing with all the other platforms too. So things like these TikTok shops, and they're fearful, so they're having to up their game and become more seller friendly. As you guys know, it's still it's never easy, but just the customers are there. It's a marketplace. But really think about it as selling a physical product, your brand, build your brand, especially now. And then if that ever really changes or you do better on the platform, you can start. We sell on 30 different platforms, so it's not like that we don't sell on the other platforms, but it's just Amazon by far is the most powerful, the most lucrative if you focus. So that was the way we built kind of the brand, was just like, let's just keep selling more through Amazon.
What are the other, I'm just real curious, I want to get to that too, but what are the other platforms like Walmart, Etsy, TikTok shop? Those are the only ones I can think of. Like,
there's a bunch of international ones too, just in other countries that are that are similar. So, but there's we had some Channel Advisor was a platform we used that could help market to all these other ones out there. Obviously eBay, we have our own Shopify site, all those things. But even if we can make more profit on our own site or our Shopify site, the upside of Amazon was so big through the algorithm that we always try to get the keyword rank via Amazon. We don't worry about the other stuff comes second. Yeah.
I feel like it's similar to YouTube. I was talking with somebody last night. It was like, oh, it's too late to get into YouTube. And how many times there's been another entrance and another entrance. And now it seems like there's another resurgence happening now. And I feel like Amazon's the same. It's like same fear is always like, oh, it's too saturated. Oh, it's too saturated. Same with like real estate. And then like 5-10 years later, there's all these people selling courses and whatnot.
You'll
It's
see
like,
the chart. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, there's a lot of people that just rush to things, of course, that like the trendy thing, right? Like if you talking about like, oh, AI is trendy or NFTs are, exciting and crypto, and people jump from thing to thing, but kind of the people that actually stay true to it, there's massive opportunity. Just look at the numbers. I mean, it hasn't declined ever yet. Someday it may, but the numbers are still just so massive. Yeah. It's about, you just got to carve out your stuff, which nowadays, again, is much more about the brand, getting a quality brand built and established. And a good thing if you do that, and again, you can do on other platforms. But the reality is you don't need the value of your asset is actually greater if it's just on Amazon, actually a potential buyer in the future actually prefers that than if it's spread out into a bunch of different channels. But
is it just easier to manage and control?
Yeah, they basically view it from a risk perspective that or the complexity to manage it and the expense. Like if you have a bunch of little piddly dollars on other platforms, they're like, that's not going to move the needle. If you have big numbers on some other platforms, then sure. But for them just to acquire it and plug it into what, depending who the buyer is, maybe they only run Amazon businesses, whatever. It's just, it's simpler for them. It's less complexity if you're not trying to dabble into too many different things.
That's awesome. Can you share your principles for scaling?
Yeah. So for scaling, and I like to nowadays talk about the framework of from a build to sell perspective, or kind of begin with the end in mind around how you go about doing that. So, kind of thinking about what your goals are as an owner is kind of where you always start. Like, Joey's shared her story. I mean, hers was somewhat unique, but not totally. It's not that uncommon. If you look at like an Empire Flippers, you'll see a lot of businesses that are for sale for, $2 million, $3 million more that started within the last 2 years, sometimes just a year, right? So depending on your goal, kind of work backwards from there. But again, nowadays, I kind of recommend people to kind of look to build, to sell, because a lot of times the skill set it takes to get to, from 0 to $1 million or 0 to a couple million is different. And our story was a little bit unique that we built it bigger, but very rarely can the same operators be the same person that can take it to 10 million to 20 million. It's a different game. You're managing a lot of people and a lot of systems. And for most people are like, they don't want to do that. They'd rather just start another brand or something. But in terms of scaling, certainly, as many to be able to systematize stuff as much as possible. Even way back then, again, I helped my partner, Jason. He was an IT guy, kind of set up a lot of systems for market. So we had like NetSuite we used for like, you customize it for everything. So we kind of built our own customized logistics system, coordinating because we had all this volume that's going around the globe and everything else. But to simplify, but you got to have the systems in place on top of what, in this case, what Amazon provides you, but your own systems and financial tools to manage everything. And we had a process in terms of product evaluation, all the new products we're launching. We have a team. We do have a team in Shenzhen, China. We eventually moved it. We have people in Atlanta, but we had a team over there. We shifted a lot of effort there, but we still had a process. Like any time that any English language or printing on anything had to come through our US team to review it for marketing purposes or social media that came out of this, because those guys don't know the nuance of the language. So anyways, just like a process for everything to get in place to be able to scale, like your product procedures, essentially there's some good tools now in terms of creating SOPs and processes there, which again, this also increases your ability to sell your brand, because the next person looking at it, if they see you're organized with, we've got this process, it's like, we've got this business in a box ready for someone else to acquire, so to speak, you're going to get a bigger multiple. And it's,
that's interesting. I think what's an interesting question is, because we started and we launched just a hodgepodge of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because and I think as a seller, like even if you were to tell me begin with the end in mind, it's such a foreign thing. You're like, how do I even know?
Yeah, you have no idea what possible end could even exist.
Yeah. With our store right now, there's like 2 products that are wildly different. More male, athlete, feminine, chic.
Same brand name or different brand name?
They're like creating their own brand names, and we're getting trademarks for it. Mm-hmm. How do you just start to like? Can you recommend starting a store and experimenting with a bunch of stuff and growing brands into their own things?
Yeah. So this is a good point you're bringing up are a good topic. So a couple thoughts. Back in the original days, you'd see more of that. Like people would just sell anything because they were thinking about just cash flow and
just generic,
whatever the hot thing was. Or in 2015, it was the fidget spinners that were selling like for $40 for a little, piece of junk for the kids. But these fads get on there, right? But you can do that, and you can if you want to learn, yes. But you want to be careful around that, because when you're building your brands, like even those 2 brands you said, like you don't want more than one brand in one account.
Yeah.
So because when you are looking to sell your business, and it's a negotiation. Like the person buying your brand, they're going to tell you they love it, and then they're going to tell you all the things that's wrong with you and your business to get the lower price, right? And they're just going to keep going. They're going to come back, and a lot of times these guys are professionals, and that's an easy one for them. Like, oh, well, you're commingled your brands, and I know you say it's this, but really, I don't think it's worth that much because we're going to have to fix that. So that can cost you easily like $100,000, $200,000.
So you mean 2 brands under the same seller account? You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you should not do that, because a lot of times when someone acquires your brand, they're not going to acquire your company. They're going to just acquire the brand and asset. They're going to acquire the asset. Mm-hmm. And so you want to make it as easy as possible for them to transfer that brand. They might look to buy both your brands. I mean, you can, depending who the buyer is, but they might just want to buy that one brand. And if it's commingled and mixed up, then it's going to cost you.
So they're buying your seller account, essentially.
Yeah. In some cases, they just transfer in the stuff because Amazon has a process to transfer, but sometimes they are just buying your account. So, if you want to go the most extreme and purest thing is you have one LLC for each brand, because it's like, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to have separate, of course, the financials and taxes, et cetera. But at a minimum, try to just separate and run the brands in different accounts.
Can you ever merge them into a different seller account? Or that's
the brands?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Amazon doesn't want you selling the same brands out of 2 different accounts because they consider that potentially manipulation, right? That's what they were. They don't mind you having, nowadays, they don't mind you having multiple accounts. Back in the day, they did because it was a black hat technique to launch your products. We'd had, 100 accounts buying our products back in the
allegedly.
Old days. Yeah, allegedly. Yeah. I heard rumorly. But yeah, there was all these, but now that Amazon recognizes these are assets that get sold and bought by people, that you want to just have it as clean as possible.
So we could technically move one to a new account.
Yes. Yep. You can. But yeah, I just recommend. So those are the type of things, as you said early on, you're like, hey, you're not necessarily thinking about it, but when you start growing and have success, right, you start building a brand, it becomes, it's not easy. I mean, you've lived that too with your brands, right? And build, and as it gets bigger and serious, like you don't want those dynamics.
Yeah.
What are things, and this is for both of you guys, like what have you, if you could go back and teach yourself something when you were starting, like for us, it would be
so many things. There could be a Bible of shit.
On, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, are there a couple key lessons that you could, and obviously you don't want to change it because it's what made you you and what brought you here, but maybe save yourself the headache. Like, what would you want to have shared with yourself?
Yeah. I mean, for me, there was a lot because my brand grew too fast. So I would say, hitting $200,000 in sales when you're a new seller and you have an expensive product. And I hit that, I think like month 2 or 3. I was like at $200,000 in sales.
Ooh.
I know. Well, right. But so then I kept pushing to grow bigger and bigger, and I should have just kept that threshold. That's a learning lesson. But from there, then I mismanaged my inventory, which cost my business in the end when I went to sell it at least $80,000.
Like you scaled too hard when you should have just kind of chilled and got the systems in order.
Right. Yeah. I should have seen that milestone and been like, okay, but then I'm such a go-getter. I was like, this is amazing. Let's sell more and more. And then I mismanaged the inventory, and I just didn't have the skill set yet because I was new to selling on Amazon. And, yes, I was in AMZ Insiders. I had the coaches and the support, but I still should have just said, hey, I need to pull back, because what ended up happening is I would be out of inventory for like 7 days at a time at really key milestones. Like I had over optimized for Father's Day. And I was like, I'm going to win at Father's Day. Every dad needs to have my product in their house. Well, then I ran out of inventory like 5 days before Father's Day. And that's like prime ordering time, right? And I was like, well, most dads have my product. And and then they get mad at your brand. Like people get mad that they couldn't get it and it was out of stock. you can't control the buyer. So that was my biggest mess up and learning experience. And yeah, I know it's like, oh, poor you. But it was like.
But it's your reality still. It's a lesson. It cost you $80,000. So
it did. And while I was going through it, it was like a kick in the stomach. Like I thought I was going to throw up when I ran out of inventory. And I was like, I ruined my business. Amazon's never going to unlock my money. Like it felt like the end of the world.
I just add on to that. It is, and it's kind of, I haven't said it in a while, but you say like, hey, the 3 rules. It sounds like never run out of inventory. Don't run out of inventory. Never even think about running out of inventory, because it's back in my few years I ran a Home Depot store somewhere in my after my military days, and so you learn all this hardcore retail stuff, and so just basic retail principles. In a store, that's the same thing, right? You go into a store, you go to the shelf to find your product, it's out of stock. You're like, that's a terrible customer experience, right?
Yeah.
So Amazon. People don't necessarily think of it because you think like, oh, there's so many products on there and someone else. Amazon, like the last thing they want someone to do is go to buy your product and it's out of stock or it's not there. So maybe they go to Walmart.com and buy it, or maybe they go to eBay or go. So Amazon is going to heavily punish you for that. And because of the dynamics of running these businesses, the lag time and the unpredictability of when your sales are maybe going to start taking off, right? Because of course, the first thing is to try to get your product. Try to get it to sell well and get going. Maybe not to have too much inventory, right? You got to balance all these things. But once it catches fire a little bit, or maybe you get the best sellers badge or something, just what Joey's happened. You get this accordion effect, because then you kill the algorithm, then you reinvest and you spend a lot of money on your advertising to get the rank back up, and then so you really
I got
do have
good
to
at
do
that cycle. I was like, ooh, wait, I know how to overspend money for advertising.
Yeah, in that case, you can have good sales, but you won't have the profitability, right? You'll just be like, oh, I feel like I'm breaking even, or we're putting all the money back in, but we're not really making headway, even though we're getting some traction sales-wise. So that one, I agree. And the other factor is just the fact with these businesses, unlike the service business, or we're doing the coaching, consulting, where you have inventory, typically that's coming over from China or coming across the world. And so a lot of people just, it's like procrastination or waiting. They don't give enough lead time. So when sales start spiking, they just don't have the right plan to get there. Or maybe you're flying the inventory in, and that's, really expensive, especially the last couple of years. So same thing, it's going to kill your margins, but you're trying to protect your keyword ranking that you don't want to lose. So yeah, without a doubt, that's a huge one there. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say it honestly sounds really good to hear you say that, because we have ran out of inventory of every single product that we have launched, and we do the accordion. We sell out, and then it's just inventory management is one of those things that nobody really talks about when it comes to e-commerce or any type of commerce.
Because all the sexiness of the thing is really on the marketing, the product, the sales, now social media, external traffic. Those things are super, super important, right? Because you can't get in the game if you don't get those things right, or you're not, and they change a lot. But kind of the less sexy, kind of the fundamentals of just kind of retail, because you're in the retail business, are those things. And those things, it's like supplier negotiations, things like that. Those things make massive differences in terms of like your actual operation of the business. But, and that's why a lot of people aren't good. A lot of people that get into it, maybe they have a strength or constantly focused on the sales side, or the, how do you get your stuff ranked and show in the product, but they don't quite realize how important that stuff is. But it's not super hard. You can get good at it. It's just a lot of people naturally aren't too excited by it.
Well, here's a question, because Amazon likes to do this really fun thing where they just hold your money, right? We all know the infamous Amazon Reserve Fund. Yeah. And so we found that, at least in our situation, we launched a lot, right? We launched a lot of products. We didn't know that you had to still have capital to launch your second order and third order. Mm-hmm. So we thought you just use that money to pay for the next one. So we got ourselves into a pickle a couple times where, we run out of inventory. Amazon's holding onto all this cash for reserve, and you can't make the next order.
And how long were they holding on to it for,
like,
you guys?
Like 2-3 weeks. Yeah, but then by that time, like, you have a bunch of fees, or you launch another product, and so all the Vine fees get taken out, and then you don't even get your money in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe the lesson is just be smarter and don't make those mistakes. But I guess what do you teach your clients to avoid that?
I think it's one, we've been through that. And I understand the reserve, and a lot of the reason Amazon is holding that is because they don't trust you yet. Sure. You're a new seller. You might have had a couple of returns, or they're checking something out on your reviews. So like, you can't predict how much they're going to hold for your reserve. And I always teach, okay, you have to put down your credit card And ideally, your advertising spend will come out of your sales, but you could be in a position when you're new and they're holding on to reserve where they are going to charge your credit card. And I do not recommend just continuing to launch products, right? It's like, oh, 6 weeks has gone by, I'm going to launch another product. I say get really good at the product that you launched, spend time making money, learning how that product is performing on Amazon for your brand. So the next product you launch, you're smarter and you're better at it. And sometimes there's this excitement like, okay, my goal is to launch 16 products this year and I have to rush. Well, then as a new seller, you'll mismanage inventory and you probably won't spend enough time on those new products that they deserve to shine. You might think, oh, this product isn't a good product. It's like, well, you don't know that because you haven't learned what you needed to learn on your first product. So even with variations, like some people come out and they're like, oh, I have this belt and I want to launch 17 different colors. It's like, okay, well, slow down. Let's do like 3, maybe 4 max to launch so you can learn and apply.
Yeah, just add to it too. Yeah, it's kind of that chicken. It's hardest when you're early on because you have the least access to the capital. You have the least leverage with your suppliers. So over time, as your suppliers trust you more, over time you can negotiate that in a big way. Like we didn't pay our suppliers until like 45 days after we received the product, like in the US in the warehouse. And then we would pay them, interest free. So essentially they were funding our inventory because they knew that the volumes there.
It took years to.
Yeah, it takes time. That's not early on, but but as you start to grow, you can start negotiating different terms with them. Obviously there's, certainly things like sellers funding. There's things. Again, you have to be careful, just make sure the kind of the math works in terms of the cash flow, but there are some resources there to try to close that gap, kind of like the bridge loan, so to speak, capital wise. And yeah, and it's a balance of growing too fast and trying to do too much. And it's good though. It's good that you try to push the envelope to launch some things because, on the flip side, it's like, hey, if you can kind of fail quickly and not fail, in big ways, like don't spend crazy money, but if you can that's not a bad process too. Like we, launch new products and everything else, we're not spending, 50 grand, we don't want to blow money, but you don't know for sure every product in terms of, sometimes you think it's going to be great. Of course it's not. And sometimes like, oh, this actually kind of caught on a little bit. We found kind of a good niche. So there is trade, but you have to just, find that balance. I'd agree. You don't want to overdo it in terms. You don't need a ton. You need one like hero SKU in your brand. That's like you only need one good product, and then you need some others that support it. And that's $1 million to $2 million exit realistically. With that, as long as you can run it responsibly. Your point, you don't need tons. If you're more ambitious, you want to do more, you can, but you don't need to. You're better off, to Joey's point, just kind of trying to run that well and not overly complicated and get the inventory right.
That's nice to know. Yeah.
Yeah, the other way to look at it too, and again, in terms of exiting, is every time you think of $1 that you save or $1 that different make, you think of it, don't think of it in terms of $1, think of it as like 4 to 5, 6 times amount impact, because every dollar, or maybe it's an expense or a software you're using that you can pull out or whatever, as you get into your business running it, because you're going to sell it for a multiple. And so every dollar is worth actually 5 or 6 times. So every dollar you can negotiate on your supplier cost, or every dollar price wise, you can up. It's actually a much bigger number to what it can be for you guys upon exit. So I think that's just a healthy way to think about, in terms of the numbers as well.
What do you want to have in place when you're looking to sell your Amazon store?
Yeah. So, a lot of sellers don't have this necessarily in place, but you want to certainly financials, that the financials have been happening in the P&Ls. The first thing they're going to do, whether you have someone help represent you or go through, or to buyers, they're going to go through and try to rebuild your P&L and see what's in there for real. There's things called add backs, which are like, let's say you guys have nice cars that you're running through your business. Those things are not going to count against you because the buyer in the future is like, all right, we can get rid of that. Or if you're paying yourself big salaries or something like that, they know those. So those things don't count. But, you think about from a buyer's perspective, there's a phrase that says it's not what the seller is selling, it's what the buyer is buying when it comes to business transactions. So it's about what what they view as the thing. So from there, you got to think it's mostly through a risk lens first. Like, what's the risk of this business? Do you have trademarks for your brands? If there's patents, that's awesome, but not common. But if there's patents, that's awesome because that de-risks. Is there any kind of moat around your brand, right? Is there anything that's unique about it? So those are important things to have in place that just, how is this business protectable in some way for other people, for another buyer to do that? They like to see, products that launch. Is there ability to launch? Is there a runway to launch new products? And so I've talked about this with Joey's product at the time because she mentioned it at the time, was like, hey, she was selling her business in the product in the US or North America, but she was getting inquiries from Australia or
Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's perfect. You can take that and say for the buyers, hey, we haven't gone into this market, but we can easily, right? There's runway because they're going to pay a multiple. So they're looking for opportunities. But first they want to see, what's the risk of the business? That's the biggest thing. They want to know, are you trustworthy actually in the dialogue? So if you're interacting with them, if you're kind of like hiding stuff or just trying to act a little weird, they're not going to trust you. So that does come into play, your ability. And as far as the business, they want to see you're going to need. It's an interesting point because a lot of times we talk to people about this. They're like, well, my business is doing great. Why would I consider selling it? Well, the problem is if your business is doing great, it's going up and up and up, and then it starts doing this. Well, now your business isn't sellable because no one wants to catch a falling knife, especially in this business. They're not looking to do turnaround. So your business almost has no value then. So you got to find the kind of that right plan and time, but you got to be careful not to get too greedy. You got to fix it.
Do you think there's an arc, like a timeline, like 2 years, 3 years is usually?
Necessarily. I mean, it's funny, like buyers typically like to see like a business like 2 years. The reason they want to see at least 2 years as a minimum is they like to see you go against your own numbers to see how your kind of comps are doing versus the previous year. But you can do it obviously as quickly as a year. But it really doesn't matter too much because there's all different type of buyers that are out there. But the last couple of years, probably profitability wise, looking at ideally margins of around 20% or higher. You can sell a business at 15%. If you're at 10% or less, you need to get to work and get those margins back up because they're looking at 20% more as a nice healthy spot. Obviously, higher is greater, but then they want to see that the business is growing top line as well too.
Interesting. So acquisitions has been a big part of your growth path and like the business that you do. Are you like consulting people on their purchases, acquisitions, exits?
Yes. I've helped a good amount of people do that too. And so you guys met Scott. So I helped those guys a lot too with deals and just through, advisement through different people just because I know it well. But yeah, so it's cool. It's fun to see people because it is, say the day you sell your business is the most money you'll ever make with your Amazon business is the day you'll sell it. Because as you guys know, when you're running your business, because you have inventory, you got to constantly put it in. The day you sell it, you don't have to, you get paid separately for your inventory too. They sell that separately. That's a separate price. You'll get paid for that inventory. And then that money gets wired to, partners in the business and it hits your account. It's like, that's where the life-changing stuff hits, So yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's a cool aspect of the business because you can then, if you want to launch other brands and, you can do it again or take a break. It's fun to see, success stories of people doing it. It's not easy and there's a lot of things you got to do right, but it's a very real, and especially now there's a lot of capital and people that are interested in buying well-run brands.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot to learn. I can imagine it's very popular to buy.
Sorry, say that again?
It's challenging to run and start an Amazon store, so I can see why it would be enticing to buy a store.
Yeah, so to that point, that's why you have all these, and someone has met last night, like Jeremy is one of the Elevate brands. They're here in Austin. They have raised over $1 billion in capital to buy brands, these aggregators. The whole thing is aggregated. It's all about risk again. So they don't want risk. So they don't want the risk of launching a product. So you're going to that's why you get paid or Joey get paid for the exit because you've taken on that risk of launching products and all the stuff you guys struggle with. They don't want to do that. They just want to get something that's predictable and can run well, right? They can still screw it up there. And some of them are right now taking these businesses over, but that's why you get the multiple because they say, okay, yeah, you've done the entrepreneurial, taking the risk, you've proven these out. Now we're going to buy kind of your winners and you get rewarded for that with, a nice payday.
So what are both of your next milestones, the next goal?
We together are launching a software for Amazon sellers. And it's something we've been working on 10 months or something. And it's awesome being Amazon sellers where we can pull in like, hey, there's this missing area, and we can build a software for Amazon sellers. And I think those are the best softwares when you're actually, a seller. So that is our big next year, like, excitement for us together.
Yeah, and continue to grow the coaching and consulting. It's interesting for us because it's, originally started back in 2017, and when I talked about earlier about running the Amazon business, we did everything kind of in secret way back then. Like, no one knew what we were doing. We didn't tell anybody. Just the way things operated, but it's actually worked really well to collaborate. We found, like, actually collaborating, and we're all at an event last night, and the people, the network, and we pull a lot of people in the network, kind of like legitimate people in the industry, because as you know, online marketing, internet, there's a lot of different characters in the space, but so we pull in a lot of those people that were at the event last night actually come and are presenters for us, and we collaborate. But the point being is, we just found, like, there's a lot of opportunity for business partnerships. You meet people. It's like, that's how Joie and I met, right? She came through, and then it's like, oh, let's do some business together. I've met, this guy, Scotty. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of see where the stars align and opportunities for really any of us in the space, and see, like, oh, hey, maybe we want to look at buying your brand. Maybe we want to help sell your brand. There's a lot of cool things you can do in the space, depending on what you're interested in doing. So yeah, we want to continue to grow that and, build that in a good way. And it's always changing, like the marketing stuff. You guys have talked, like, hey, the social game, it's like, you're always trying to figure this stuff out. So it is interesting. We're always trying to kind of reinvent ourselves, both on the AMZ Insiders, but also it overlaps. It's a skill set in terms of actually your Amazon brand. A lot of it's converging more and more with all these social media platforms in terms of, like, e-commerce versus social media. So kind of social commerce. And so, yeah, so we're trying to grow and get bigger and better and make a bigger impact with the business there.
That's awesome.
You got one?
Yeah. Patent questions. So I bet a lot of people have this question, how much do they actually help? And I'll give you an example. So over a 6-month period, we developed a product. I saw a need in the market, just back and forth with a supplier, created this product, and then we launched it. And about a month before we launched, a bunch of products that were kind of similar but super cheap and not quite the same launched. Yeah. We launched ours, crushed it. We didn't know what it would do, because we did the opposite. We didn't find, a bunch of numbers and sales volume and an opportunity.
It was just a giant experiment.
Yeah, complete experiment. And it just fucking took off. And then about 3 months in, we were doing great. A bunch of hijackers jumped on, and then now there's a bunch of copycat sellers popping up like crazy. Is it worth applying for a patent, or how do patents really hold up very well? Or is it better just to focus on just keep chugging forward and build a strong brand that's just high quality and not worry about knockoffs?
It's a good question, because certainly, building a good brand without question. So it's not an either or. You definitely want to do that. But I would definitely, if you have an opportunity for patent, it's like very powerful, right? So it definitely, you get a bigger multiple on the backside. It's very attractive to a potential buyer if you can have a patent in some ways, design patent. I know Joey, you experienced this with you guys were, I think, working on that. So too, it's a huge deal, because it de-risks it, because it does provide you some protection. It is some effort. You don't want to spend tons of time of chasing people, off and get totally distracted by it. But it is powerful too, but you can scare a lot of people away. You can have letters that go to people. But yeah, no, it is definitely a big deal to have a patent, and it's extremely attractive to, buyers that will look at it, like the aggregators, everything else. They put you in a different category if you have that, because then your product is defensible. Whether you decide, when to do it or when you're going to do it, it depends what's worth your time and the money. But any other stuff you did with on the patent side, or at least looking into it?
And would you get a design versus utility, or is it the same thing? Or
it depends. They'll tell you if it's a design or utility patent when you go up to do. I would do whichever one is like easiest and fastest. But yeah, just having even the patent pending, right? Because it takes a long time, does give your brand a lot of authority. And so I chased patents and went after patents. And I think that helped when I was selling my brand, but it did scare people from copying the look and feel and exactly what my brand is. And there were other products similar to it. Amazon takes it serious when there's copycats and you have put in time to show that you're a real brand and you've gotten patents or your patent is pending. And I mean, Amazon has programs that'll help protect your brand too. I think like transparency is one of them, but you do need to put in the work for it. So I always recommend it. Like if it's a unique product, like definitely get a patent, because at the end of the day, we're in this to make money. And when you have that patent, it's so attractive for somebody to buy your business. And for people shopping on Amazon, they're like, oh, cool, I'm buying a patented product. Like, I want the real deal. I don't want the knockoff.
Nice.
That makes sense. Because, I mean, realistically, someone could just change one small feature and then patent doesn't really do anything. But it's more about the...
Yeah, but it's like a percentage change.
Okay.
Yeah, most people they're not going to go through the effort a lot of times too, or they're not going to want to do that. But that's not a theoretical. I mean, it's proven. Like the surveys done to all the aggregators, what things they value in buying, what they'll pay a higher price for, and patent is like one of the number one things.
Interesting.
Like, besides, obviously, a well-run business is like the numbers have to be there to support it, the margins and the growth. But the patent is like they say definitely they'll pay a bigger value.
Makes sense because you're protected in your market.
Yeah, it's an asset. It's just it's an asset to that you guys own. Your trademark's an asset too. It's just not the patent's a more valuable asset.
Have you talked to an attorney to get a patent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And are you within your timeline?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have until, I think, like August
Nice.
to get it done. So
Yeah. We want to do it ASP. We're just waiting for funding.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of
Amazon needs to give us some money.
Oh,
Yeah.
the money.
We're waiting,
It's
yeah.
the money thing.
We scaled so hard and we actually had orders ready to go, but then we couldn't pay the rest of them. And so they're just sitting there and we would have just like done so well. But in some ways I'm grateful because we pushed ourselves into such a deep end. We have to figure it out.
Mhm.
And I rather in some ways be in that state of figure it out than be too conservative and always afraid to push.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Kind of the best way to learn is to do things, and as long as it's not fatal.
Yeah.
So
That too.
Do it and
Don't
fuck
be
it up, but
homeless.
don't make it terminal.
Yeah, but how are you guys staying on the same page with that? Like,
On what?
We stopped. We have an agreement that no more products, no more launching anything until
Yeah, we're done launching.
This is like
and you two agree on everything. Because I had
Yeah.
a business partner before Jamie in a consumer product, and we were not always on the same page, especially when you're running out of inventory or you want to spend money here.
Well, we have small disagreements on like maybe what should we spend the money on. Like, oh, I think we should put it towards this. Like we had one disagreement where we barely a disagreement. We're always on the same page for the most part, but we had one product that was chugging along, cooking really well. It's not like the huge seller, but it's like a momentum product. And we had some funds. We're like, well, we could either put it towards the one that's making some money, or we can put it towards the one that's like out of stock, but this is like the big product. And so we're like, well, which one do we do, right?
Yeah, like do we piss off the supplier because we
which
already
supplier are we
ordered?
going to piss off?
Yeah,
Right. But we
Which is
had
a brutal thing. That
the reason that we work well together, I think, is we're both very similar and we agree on stuff most of the time. Like the big decisions we agree on. But we're very different people in that he is the guy that wants to go fast and break everything.
yeah,
And just like
Six
he will push
gear
just,
all
like,
the way.
launch as many products as possible. Always. And I'm a little more reserved and conservative on like what we want
which
to
is
do.
very helpful.
And he's very helpful.
We'd be homeless.
Because if there was no me, Brent would just blow up into space, and then the whole thing would crumble.
that's the slow down to win.
Exactly. And if it wasn't for Brent,
Yeah.
then I would still be launching my first product. So like we both push each other in the right ways.
And I think because we live together, we can like debate it over like a 3-day period.
Yeah.
During breakfast, during lunch, at night.
I didn't know y'all lived together.
Yeah.
This is like official.
Yeah, yeah. We're what is our phrase?
Heterosexual life partners.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I think we have a rule. It's like unless we both agree, we don't move forward. So it's like we kind of just hash it out until like we're like,
I can
all right, okay.
We'll just make passive aggressive petty comments to each other over the course of 3 days until we finally hash it out.
Yeah, we're
It's like a real relationship.
But the point you guys are, the example is another big one just for these businesses is, I've given this talk before, but I believe entrepreneurship is a team sport. And so the more you can, and you guys are examples that it's really hard to be solo entrepreneurs, and the ability to have a partner in some ways, massive opportunity for success. Because, it's, and again, this applies to a lot of things in life, but just, it's like fitness, right? Where it's like, if you're going at it your own, so many people are not going to make it because they're going to get stuck. They're going to get done. But, it's a lot more fun to do it with someone and push each other, but also just set a counterbalance, but also the highs and lows or the days you got to have ability to push along. So, but yeah, so entrepreneurship definitely is a team sport. And so you have your chance for success, even if, you guys have had some ups and downs, is just much greater. Versus, and again, we've helped like 1,000+ people. We've seen it a lot too. It's not impossible for the individuals, but for most people, if you can find a business partner, and sometimes you talk about funding earlier too, a lot of times, let's say you guys find a third partner that's like, hey, like I don't have time for this, but I've got like a lot of capital. So, hey, what could we
did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We also have that going on.
We also have that.
All right.
That's a whole other layer of complexity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, if it's the right partner or whatever else, then that can help, like, hey, we can put in there. Yeah. So we'll put this in, we have the agreement in. So, there's plenty of options to make this stuff work, as long as, you just have to do it responsibly and learn from lessons and try to, put together a successful business.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very grateful for people like you guys who are able to kind of show us the pathway, like shine some light on the path, because it's easy, and this goes for all entrepreneurs and people just doing their own thing. It's easy to get tunnel vision on what you're doing and feel like you're alone and like you're stuck and like, oh, I'm the only one dealing with it. But the more we talk to people in this space, and like, you took us to the event last night and talking to other people and their journeys and their path, it's like, all right, we're fucking things up for sure, but everybody has done that. And it's the same path that they've all walked, and you feel less alone because you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because sometimes it can feel defeating.
Yeah. We talk about just like entrepreneurship is just solving problems after problem after problem. If you solve enough problems, you'll get rewarded X amount, for that. And that's what's cool about the Amazon space a little bit, is like, wow, you can actually see goals of like these. That's why, depending on your owner's goals, to start there, what your guys' goals are. Like, what would you want to do after you exit the brands? You want to just launch more, other businesses, or kind of figure that out. But then, like I said, kind of work back from that and realize, like, no, these are real opportunities and real goals you can achieve. They're not just hypotheticals or mythical. And, you can put your mind behind it and work there. I mean, again, Joie did a good job of planning exactly how many sales she wanted and goals and targets. And then, the exit thing, not necessarily was planned from day one, but she had some of those things in place that lent itself if she wanted to exit or not exit.
And it was so bumpy though. I mean, it was such a bumpy ride. And I joined AMZ Insiders. I knew Jamie's success, and that's the reason I joined, because he had reached the results that I wanted, being a successful seller. And I really thought everybody was making millions of dollars selling on Amazon. So when I'm hitting the $200,000 in sales mark, I was like, oh, I'm still playing catch up. Like I have to catch up to all these people and go. And I was alone in my car listening to Grant Cardone books, right? Like 10X, like go harder. And, you get like ramped up in anxiety listening to his books. And I was like, everyone's way more successful than me. And Grant Cardone, I remember listening to it, and it's like, what Jamie was just saying, it's like, to be successful, you have to create problems, solve problems. But I kept saying, well, I'm creating like really big problems. Like maybe I'm not supposed to be creating this many problems. And then when I finally dropped my ego and like told Jamie and the coaches like what was happening in the business, it was first like, hey, no, actually you're doing really well. But yeah, totally see why you're making all these mistakes. And then I was like, okay, wait, this is just part now out, it's been a long time, but I'm like, it is totally part of it, like riding the waves as an entrepreneur. And anybody who says it's easy is totally lying, or they're not successful.
Yeah, that's the thing. Whenever, and then there's Amazon itself is constantly feels like they're creating problems potentially for you. And
they hate their sellers.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Dude,
they are getting better and better because they're more incentivized, because there's the lawsuit that you see about Amazon selling their products as for sellers, and how they, in other foreign countries, like in Europe, they have a lot stricter rules. So Amazon has to be a good actor. So they're motivated to try to continue to be better for sellers, which actually is good for us. But yeah, the reality of it is whatever, and this is just in business too. You see, like whenever you get, it's like, all right, we got the algorithm, we're getting our sales great, we got a great product. It's like, yeah, now there's this problem, or, hey, now some of our money's being held, or we have a cash flow problem. It's just like, that's why a lot of people can't succeed in the business, because in entrepreneurship, because there are so many things, and as you grow faster and bigger, there's just becomes, it feels like more problems. But if you're comfortable in that, and Amazon is going to come out with new rules, or they change, reviews, you couldn't do search, find, buy, a few years back that used to kind of like the launching strategies, like there's things that are always changing. So you just have to just like, be in that, like, hey, if we're problem solvers, like, don't sweat it, just keep solving and go the right direction,
Yeah, exactly. Because there's no doubt that, a lot of entrepreneurs, and for us too, like there's no doubt that we're going to make it work. Like there's 100% faith in it, but there's vindication hearing that like all the weird mistakes and stuff that you make are also happening to other people. And I can't remember who it was. Who is it that has that quote? Maybe it was Cody Sanchez. And she says, like a true entrepreneur, the ones that can really make it are the ones who can handle the highest levels of stress. It's like you're training yourself for stress and you become tempered, like tempered glass. And those are the people that, right? Like you're training yourself to take on the most amount of stress at all times. And then it just becomes the norm. And then you just keep moving up in tiers.
Yeah. It's like, as you become more successful, it's because you've exposed yourself to more stress and you've been able to push through it. Mm-hmm. And so, because if you don't, you back down or you quit, right? And that's probably why there's a lot of people who just aren't entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and you see the same. That's why, I mean, you guys in the fitness space, it's like the same thing, right? You can see people that are successful with stuff that can stay with things versus people that can't or don't. There's just a lot of commonality you see in other aspects of their life. It's not that different other than it's like, hey, it's a really cool platform and opportunity. We used to look around, my partner would be like, I can't believe this business in 7 years, what was built. It's like, there's no other business in the world we could have done this with other than the fact this is Amazon FBA and we can go global, we can do all this stuff. And the same thing, people like, husband, wives teams are just like, building these brands that look massive and everything else. They're just like a 2-person team with a couple VAs. It's, so that part's pretty, try not to get lost and take for granted the opportunity. That's really cool.
Right.
And that, is there. And then there's again, now there's a market to sell the brands. Like again, in the past, there really wasn't. So yeah, there's good things that aren't not hard, but like I said, it applies, I find, to other aspects of people's lives, so much of it, or, like analysis paralysis. We'd have people come that were helping, they paid us, an investment and they just can't launch a product because, and I've seen this over years, they're just so afraid, they're so analytical, they're just so fearful. There's a new tool that came out. Why I haven't used that tool yet. And it's like, well, you're never going to do. You're better off be the other extreme actually and kind of push
better off being like us and launching 20 products in a year.
Yeah, no, you are. I mean, you guys have a balance, you said, but no, I mean, because you never have any chance for success if you're afraid of failure. Mm-hmm. And you see that a lot too. And it's hard for people. Those people really shouldn't be entrepreneurs. They probably have to, just stay to the day job if you can't take some risk.
Right.
I got one more question for you. AMZ Insider's question. So we took a course and that's how we learned to kind of build up to where we are now. But we find in that course, it's just plateaued. We get on calls, just kind of still beginners, and we're really looking for that next level of 100 to all the way to 1 million. How does that work inside of your guys' business for your students?
Yeah.
Right? Do you have a separation? Do you have mini masterminds where people at a certain level only meet together so you're not hanging out with what's a SKU?
Yeah, good question. The way it's a little different than that because it's pretty boutique. We don't work with a ton of people. I mean, we have a team of basically 5 or basically 4 primarily coaches, including Joie and I both. So it's really more about that. We have some guys that are doing 4 or 5 million with us, but the reason why they're doing it is because they just have direct access to us. So yeah, the trainings, and you said industry leaders that we pull in, that's applicable to any guys or the AI tools, whatever we're sharing. It doesn't matter what level, but it's more about hey, you're jumping directly or a Zoom call or going through the stuff. So the guy at 4 million is different than someone new, but for him, he doesn't spend any time he's just interacting with us directly. So that's the reason we did the coaching initially, was just because I didn't know who we actually would attract initially, because I thought there's not as many bigger sellers, but those guys, but yeah, it's just that customization one-on-one. So a lot of times it's Joey's handling certain aspects, but they're like, oh, Jamie, this question is this is a good fit for you, or someone's looking to exit their brand. So that's kind of how we handle it. And it works really well for us and same thing, the beginner, they're not getting overwhelmed because they're not ever seen it. We just work with people one-on-one.
Yeah.
I guess it's again, it's like customized fitness or whatever, right? Same thing. It's if you're working with a certain person, if you have that aspect, we didn't ever want to kind of just do the course aspect because we don't think that was going to be valuable enough. Right. And a lot of it to me is the mentorship and the accountability aspect more than more just the information. We can get information. It's more about helping with the execution.
Cool. So we have access to you guys as coaches.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly.
Unlimited questions and answers. And that was where, when I was in the program, it was up to me how much I was going to share about my brand and what my product was. And some people out of the gate are comfortable being like, hey, here's my product, review my listing, and we can look at it. And we remind them the only people who can hear you are coaches. And then from there, it's like, okay, for you guys, it's like PPC. And you told me your PPC, right? And I was like, okay, well, option one is you get on with our PPC coach, one-on-one Zoom, spend an hour, however long it takes to dig in. Or are you at a point where you need to talk to one of our partners and maybe pay them to help you manage it? And that is like the customized coaching you get with us. No other program does it because it's hard to do and it's time consuming. And Jamie built this program and then I came in to partner because it really is shaping and giving back to the Amazon community to make and build successful sellers.
Sold.
Sign right here.
Once Amazon pays us some money, we'll get
there you go.
You can have it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for coming, Jamie, Joey. I guess final words, anything that you would want to share to the audience, whether it's about business, mindset, anything that you feel would be beneficial for them to hear.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and it just I'd like reiterate the point about I think entrepreneurship is a team sport. Big believers. I think everyone should sell a physical product. I just think nowadays you have the opportunity. We know people that sell products that don't sell it on Amazon; they sell it on something else. But I do believe there is this awesome opportunity for everyone to have their own brand, their own product to sell. And Amazon FBA private label, like owning that brand is what's valuable. We're just big believers in brand because of having an asset that you can exit, not trying to just create cash flow or retail arbitrage or do things the right way. And Amazon building brands. That's why it is a better time period because you don't have to like game the system. You can do things kind of the right way. It's not necessarily easy, but build a brand that's valuable, that's going to provide value to a customer at the end of the day. That's what you're doing. And you can do really well. So, and like I said, if you can team up with some people and get plugged into a community, of course, obviously we believe in that stuff. There's just so many opportunities in the space, which are cool too. Because, a lot of times selling on Amazon, there's opportunities to branch into other things in the space. It's so many opportunities to help in the industry, in the space, which I think is also pretty cool for people as well.
Yes, very well said. And I would say y'all are listening to this podcast already. So I know that you're on your entrepreneurial path or you're considering it. So just keep pushing through it and get around the right people. And when I dropped my ego and I was like, hey, these are my business problems. And then I wanted to help other people. That is when everything opened up and I started making more money, becoming more successful. And then I genuinely want to help Amazon sellers or anybody be better and be successful. And those are the kind of people that I want to be around. And this is an awesome podcast. So thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here, guys.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Where can people find you and AMZ Insiders?
Yeah, so you can go to amzinsiders.com is just our website overall. If someone was looking to jump on a call type thing, we have a site, it's called callamz.com. You can book a time with the team, fill out a little bit of information. But and then or social media. If you guys see us on social media, you can reach out. Joey's always good about responding to Instagram.
I'm only good on Instagram. Yeah, I need to expand, but yeah. Instagram.
Yeah, so don't be shy. We'd love to hear from people and connect.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for coming, guys.
Thanks, guys.